All right, let's move on and talk about Breach's Fault Line. By far, one of the weakest abilities in the game. Not because of the ability itself, just because of more like the execution of the ability. The thought behind this ability is insane, and it can be used in so many different situations. And just as I said, the thought behind it, it's really, really good. The only problem is that it's so easy to dodge, and it's 9 out of 10 times it's going to be a guessing game more than anything else, because if you don't know where the enemy is. Let's say I'm going to stun back of C site by the generator thing. I'm going to stun here. That's a really good stun to do, because it's such a tight corner here. The stun is going to come right over here, and the enemy player is going to have to come out here into the open if he wants to dodge it. And most players won't want to do that. Most players would rather just get hit by that fault line and just wait it out. That's where I think it's really effective, in those tight little corners, which you can then use. Pop your flash over here, and then you have your Aftershock right into that corner. That's a play that works really effective. The problem with his fault line becomes, or we see the problem with his fault line when you look at open areas, or when you look at where you don't know the enemy player is playing. Because let's say if I'm going to do a fault line right across here, okay, the enemy player just straight ahead in this example, look how easy it is. It's so small. It's literally from like this point over here to this point. I mean, anyone can just avoid it extremely easy. They can see it coming a mile away. They get this big notification on their screen that something is coming their way, and it's very easy to dodge. I've said this for a long time now. His fault line needs to be changed, and the way they need to change it, I think, is just have that same inverted triangle effect as his ultimate ability, just much smaller, of course. And in that sense, it's worth it to sit here and wait half a minute and go get your coffee, go have some lunch, and come back by the time it's fully charged. It's worth it, because then you know at the end, at the tip of his fault line, it's going to be really wide. So the enemy player playing at that range is going to be stunned, because it's going to be very difficult for him to basically avoid it. I think Jet would be the only exception, because she can dash away. But right now, I see very little purpose of his fault line. And the fact that with the latest buff, they basically added in that it descopes oppers, that is probably one of the best additions. The only problem is it's a guessing game, as I said. You're going to use his fault line in many situations. You're not going to know if there's an opper there. And if you're going to have to make that decision on whether or not, for example, you're going to use his fault line to cover generator, back of this box, or heaven, it's literally a guessing game. And if you say then, okay, but then you need to get intel from one of your teammates. Sure, which teammate is going to give you that intel? Sova? Okay. Are you going to necessarily want to run a Sova and a Breach in one comp? I don't know. Cypher with his camera also works, but probably will get shot out before he even gets a chance to use it. So a lot of the times I feel like Breach is he's alone, and he needs to initiate, but it's very difficult for him to initiate with an ability that is so narrow, and it's practically in many cases pointless, because the enemy can just avoid it, right? One of the biggest and most effective things that you can use this fault line for is one, again, as I mentioned, in tight situations or tight corners, or two, combining it with his Aftershock. If you sit here, if you look where it goes there into that little cubby, and then you use this Aftershock into this corner over here, very effective, because this player will be stunned, and he will be slowed, and he can hardly move, right? And it's a lot of the times it's an easy kill, or at least you do some pretty serious damage. But yeah, again, that's my opinion on his fault line. I really think they need to make it into an inverted triangle, so it's actually worth to sit there and charge it up for 2 minutes before it reaches its maximum range. And then you know that at its maximum range, it's going to be most effective, because right now there's no difference if you charge it up fully or not, because the enemy can just avoid it. But yeah, that's basically my opinion. I'm going to show you an in-game example now, where I thought it was really effective, so maybe you guys can learn something from it. And after that, we'll be jumping into his Aftershock.
Oh, bait generator.
Clearing out. Pop. Flash out.
All right, let's talk about Breach's Aftershock. Now, I want to try and do this in under a minute because I think it's going to be very easy to get my point across here. His Aftershock is really good, but really bad at the same time. It's really good because you can essentially clear a corner, and a corner that might be awkward or dangerous for you to peek on your own. And the fact that you can then clear that corner with the utility, forcing the enemy to come out, getting an easy kill on them, is really effective. The only problem with it is that more like often you're gonna have to peek a corner in order to use it. You can obviously use it in situations like this where you don't really need to peek the corner. That's just an example, and that works really well. But the problem is, if I want to clear this corner over here, I'm going to have to peek it. And if I peek it, then either the player that's playing here, or if I wide swing and peek it, anyone playing in market will essentially kill me. And I feel like if we do a direct comparison to Sova, because they're both initiators, and Sova has shock darts, which also deal damage and can essentially clear a corner as well, the fact that Sova doesn't even need to put himself in a dangerous situation is kind of borderline insulting to Breach's kit, because Breach, his main role is to clear those corners. Yet there's another agent in the game that can do it without putting himself in danger, if you know what I mean. So Sova could do a dart up here. He could do it bounce off a wall without exposing himself, is essentially what I'm saying. So if you ask me, what I would do to Breach's Aftershock is essentially give him a right click function where he can right click and it will skip the first wall and it will go to the second wall. Now, before you say that is way too OP, I would kind of disagree with you for the fact that his fault line or his Aftershock takes, what is that? I don't know the exact timing. Roughly, let's say 2 to 3 seconds to detonate. I mean, you can go get a coffee, have lunch, come back, and it's still not even, it still hasn't detonated, if you know what I mean. So, it's just the fact that it takes so long. It's already balanced in that sense. It's actually nerfed to the ground in a certain way, without them even having nerfed it. I just think there needs to be, for the main character that clears corners, he shouldn't have to expose himself and put himself in a dangerous situation. Now, just to say the final point of him right-clicking and then skipping the first wall, there should be a limit to this, of course. Like, he shouldn't be able to, for example, from here, maybe all the way to that corner or to that wall. Maybe that shouldn't be possible. I don't know the details. I don't know how that would work in terms of balance. But it's just an idea, and I think that it would definitely be much better for his kit, because at the moment, the fact that he has to then expose himself around several corners, I've died to that quite often, and I do it to help my team clear a corner, to then die because I need to expose myself to clear that corner. It's just kind of counterintuitive, and it counters his kit, and it doesn't make sense, right? So this is my opinion. It's by no means is it correct, or wrong. It's just my opinion. So let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your thoughts on his Aftershock, because I think there's so many cool ideas that they could basically do with it, because right now it's not where it should be. All right, so let's talk about Breach's ultimate ability, Rolling Thunder. And I think we all know now that it goes much faster than it did previously, and that addition and that buff has gotten me so many kills now. So I think it's by far one of the strongest things they've done to his kit. And I still think it's one of the best ultimate abilities in the game. However, it's not always easy to use on your own. I think where Breach's ultimate ability really comes into play and is really effective is when you build a strat around it. So for example, let's say you're sitting here in Ramen on or B-Link, as we call it, on Split. You can basically tell your team to go mid to B, from mid bottom to mid top, and then through mid mail. As soon as they are just outside, just on mid top over there, you want to pop your ult into here, right? And anyone playing this angle over here, which usually there's at least always one player, sometimes even two, is going to get stunned, and it's either going to force him to fall back or they're going to get hit by it. And we've done this several times with the guys that I play with, and it works really effective. Now, when you're using the ultimate ability for yourself, let's say in this example, you're just going to use it here, and you want to kill
Right there.
you want to kill an enemy player that's in B garage.
Right there.
You're gonna use it.
Ult's ready.
Just make sure that you follow up with a flash, right? Because otherwise, what's gonna happen is the guy that's gonna be stunned, he's just gonna hold this angle over here. He's gonna hear your steps, and he can pre-fire you. And as we all know, it has happened probably to all of us. It's pretty frustrating. So make sure that you follow up with a flash after that. But the current state of Breach's ult, I think it's really good, and I hope they leave it as it is and they don't make any changes to it. Yeah, that's basically not much to say about his ult. I'm really happy with it at the moment, and again, I hope they don't make any changes to it. All right, so just to answer the question, is Breach OP in his current state? And I really don't think so. I think his flashes in certain situations can be really annoying to play against, and yes, they can be OP in certain ways, but overall, if you look at his kit as a whole, I think if you then start to compare him to other agents, let's say Omen, you start to realize, well, actually those two smokes that Omen has is so much more effective than, for example, Breach's fault line, right? And it just goes to show that I think his kit in certain ways is really good, but on the other side, look at his fault line and his Aftershock, they're a bit lacking, and they're not really at the level they should be for the role that he has. As I've already mentioned, for example, his Aftershock is supposed to clear corners, yet there is Sova that, in my opinion, can clear corners as well without putting himself in a dangerous position. So I think they just need to rework a little bit on his fault line and his Aftershock, and if that means giving him 2 flashes again, that's worth it. Like, I would rather see Breach with 2 flashes and then have his fault line and his Aftershock buffed up a bit, because right now those two in those situations, they're very difficult to use. In clutch situations, very difficult to use. It's really good that his fault line can descope players, but then again, as I've already mentioned, it's kind of a guessing game. You're gonna basically use it, but you're not gonna know where they are. If you know where they are and you know that they're in a tight space, it's really good, but it's very situational then, right? And that's not how Breach should be. Breach should not be a very situational agent. He's the type of agent that should be able to initiate in any situation, right? So he should have one of the most dynamic kits in the game. Similar to Sova, an initiator. Sova has one of the most dynamic kits in the game, right? His kit is super effective for defense, offense, clutch situations. His animations are quite fast. The fact that he has 2 bounces. The drone, it is quite expensive, but then again, the drone is one of the best utilities in the game. So I think if you then compare Breach and Sova in many ways, simply because they are both initiators, again, it kind of hurts to say this, but I think Sova comes up on top in many cases. And if you just look at most people that play this game, if you don't look at the pro scene or whatever, a lot of people are going to be solo queuing, right? What's going to happen is they're going to obviously pick Sova in many cases because he is overall a simpler agent to play in solo queue, and in many cases he is able to have a direct effect which his teammates can see, right? His teammates can see his recon bolt, they can see if it targets anyone, they can see if it doesn't target anyone, whereas Breach's flashes, you're going to flash something but nobody's going to know what happened behind that flash, right? So essentially what ends up happening is you end up playing Breach more as a duelist, and you end up following on your own flashes more often than not, right? That's how I've been playing Breach, to be honest. I've been playing him as a duelist, and I've been trying to come up with some aggressive plays with Breach that work really well on many spots on several maps. But it's going to be interesting to see moving forward, especially in the pro scene, how they incorporate Breach into a comp and how they build strats around him. I think based on that, Riot is then going to make changes to Breach's kit. But this is my speculation. His fault line and his Aftershock, they need to be changed. Full stop. That's my opinion. But basically that's it for this video, guys. I mean, it was quite a long one. I ended up dividing it into 2 parts. But I think I was able to cover everything that you guys were asking, and I was able to basically go over everything of Breach's kit, give my opinion. And in future videos, I'll probably have some more aggressive Breach bots, a little bit more of a guide to him, and also a lot more gameplay. That's the plan. So yeah, Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on basically what we talked about in this video. And also, what do you think? Do you guys think Breach is OP in its current state or not? All right, let me know, and take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys later.